Welcome to the Student Ministry Podcast. My name is Steve Cullum, and I am so excited for you to be here for episode 10 of the Student Ministry Podcast. Today we have another first. We have two guests at once. We have Eric Holmstrom, who is the Student Ministries pastor and over the high school at Purpose Church, Pomona, California. But we also have the junior high pastor, who is also in charge of creative teams there at the church, Adrian Pichay, and I'm going to chat with them together to see how their ministry works together, how they partner up in the student ministry there at the church, but also how they partner with grandparents at their church. I think it's going to be an awesome conversation that you're really going to benefit to see how the student ministries and the elderly people in their church are partnering together and just furthering the kingdom together in partnership. It's going to be an awesome conversation. Also, for those of you that have been listening to the podcast for a while now, this podcast episode is a little bit longer. I apologize, but the conversation is so rich. It's so great. I just couldn't cut it down to like 30 minutes or anything. It had to go a little over, so I apologize for that, but I know that you'll be blessed from it. But first, we need to talk about our sponsors because our sponsors are awesome as well. And without them, this podcast just wouldn't happen. We need their sponsorship, and we are so excited to talk to you about WorkCamp NE. That's WorkCampNE.com, and you can find out all about their summer mission trips. They do a lot more than just summer mission trips, but summer mission trips are one of the biggest things that they do. This coming year in 2017, they're going to Springfield, Vermont. They're going to Alton, New Hampshire, and they're also going to take a trip out of the Northeast for the first time and head over to Illinois. So if you're looking for an inside the country mission trip for your students that's going to allow them to serve the needy by doing some home repair and really get connected with the people they're serving and love them in Jesus' name, check out WorkCampNE.com. Our other sponsors, it's a combined sponsorship between National Network of Youth Ministries and Reach Youth New England, and together they are all about connecting youth ministers and youth workers together, just like us. So if you are looking to connect with other youth leaders in your area, make sure you check out reachyouthne.com for all you that are in New England, or across the country, check out youthworkers.net for National Network of Youth Ministries. You will not be disappointed. It's a great way to connect with other youth workers in your area. Make sure you check both of those out, and we thank them so much for their sponsorship. All right, now into this conversation with Adrian and Eric from Purpose Church in Pomona, California. All right, thanks so much, Adrian and Eric, for joining us today.
Thanks, man. Thank you so much for having us.
Oh, no problem. And so this is the first time we've actually done two people on interview. So podcast listeners, forgive us if we're talking over each other. But Eric and Adrian are a team there at their church in Pomona, California. Am I pronouncing that correctly, Pomona?
That's yes. Right. Yeah.
Right.
Purpose Church.
Purpose Church in Pomona, California, doing junior high and high school together. And so we just wanted to pick their brain and see how that all works together. So first question is really, what's your stories? So you can decide who goes first, but what's God been doing up into your life to bring you where you are now?
Yeah, we'll let Adrian start.
Wow, thank you, Eric. So basically my story is I did not grow up a Christian. I kind of had some backgrounds when I was younger of just kind of being introduced to church a little bit through family, but ultimately not ever really attending. And it wasn't until I was a sophomore in high school, actually, that I had some friends who had invited me to a youth group. And I was like, what's a youth group? And they were like, yeah, it's this thing on Wednesday nights where you go to church. And I was like, what, a youth group and you go to church on a Wednesday night? That seems pretty crazy. I didn't know young people went to church. So they were extremely persistent and kind of invited me over a number of weeks. And so I finally agreed to go and just kind of jumped in. And really from that first night onward, I was like, wow, this is a unique place. And I just felt very much welcomed and accepted. And I think the thing for me that was really interesting that I learned later on is I feel like I really experienced the love of Christ, and especially from the body of Christ right off the bat. And so, I was the first first person in my family to come to know the Lord. And then getting into my college years, I started serving as just a volunteer leader at my youth ministry that I grew up in. And that was just very transformative experience for me. Really helped, I think, teach me a lot, and I think God used that to show me, hey, this is something I really want you to keep doing. So I actually had started college as an engineering major and thought I was just gonna, sit at a desk all day and do AutoCAD. And through my first couple years in college, I just realized, man, this is not what God has for me. And so
I don't think you really fit the mold.
Yeah, did not. Now looking back, engineer. I thought, what was I thinking?
Yeah. I have a very similar situation. God got a hold of me probably my senior year of high school and did the same thing, but I had planned on going into computer engineering and stuff as well. And yeah, now looking back, I'm like, I don't want to be sitting at a computer like coding all day. That sounds so boring.
Right.
You guys are so much smarter than me. I was hoping to be like a professional skater or play video games or something.
Yeah. So the engineering route didn't last too long. And then I ended up just through different conversations and just a lot of prayer and talking with trusted people, deciding to transfer to a Christian college in the area, Azusa Pacific University, and ended up majoring in theology, and with the goal that I would end up getting into youth ministry. And so about my senior year, just as I was wrapping up, I had happened to meet Eric and had a conversation with him about getting into ministry. And so after that summer, I came back and just through lots of, prayer and conversations again.
And lots of meals. We went out.
I
wined and dined, and we bought him everything that he deeply desired to try to get him on our team.
Yeah. And so it just kind of jumped in. So this is actually my first really youth ministry job officially, which I've been so blessed to be a part of this place and feeling like I'm part of a team that really values me. I hear a voice. And it's also, I think, a team and a church that is very much teaching me what it means to do ministry, and not just in a youth ministry context, but I think in the broader church context as well.
Cool. And how long have you been there?
I've been here for about 1.5 years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. And then for me, kind of grew up in the church, but throughout my junior high years, actually, I was really involved and invested in skateboarding, and I loved it. I was sponsored for a little while and rode for the local skate shop and skate park in our area. And I think just most of what I was doing at that time, my parents just didn't know about, kind of living this double life and still going to church on Sundays because that's like what we did as a family. But my life couldn't have been farther from Jesus and living for what he had created me for. And but then I went into summer camp my freshman year, and I went because this really cute girl was going to summer camp.
Classic story.
Yeah, exactly. So I kind of went to this summer camp and was really excited about furthering a relationship with this girl. And it turns out that Jesus had other plans. And so, man, just got a hold of my heart through the messages and through the community, man. I was just invited into this community that felt so radically different. I mean, I still like to skateboard a little bit. I love skating culture. The one downside for me at that time was that the people around me who were skating just were not great influencers. And I felt like I had to become somebody else to hang out with them. Whereas as soon as I got involved in the church, man, these people, they just loved me and they cared for me and they poured their lives into me, and I mattered to them before I did anything right or wrong. And it just felt like God really used them to draw me back to him. And so quickly after accepting Christ that freshman year, quickly after that, just sensed God maybe calling me into ministry. And that happened through hanging out with my youth pastor a lot and just seeing him do ministry. And I just loved it. Like the Mormon girl would come to youth group that Sunday morning, and I'd run to my youth pastor and I'd go, this girl, she's here. This is her name and this is her backstory. And man, I hope, we can keep her here. And I just found myself, loving the task of working with students and youth ministry and seeing God use my life and leadership. I mean, it was all just so attractive to me. And then I had other people around me kind of affirming that. And so was going to go to a 4-year college, and then my parents had a conversation with me and said, hey, we don't think that we can afford it. And around that same time, my high school pastor said, hey, I'd love for you to do a 2-year internship with me while you do junior college. So I thought this was going to be great. I was going to be mentored by him for 2 years. And about 3 months into that internship, he said, hey, man, like, I'm sensing that I need to be a police officer. And so that was a huge deal for me. I remember going, man, like I thought the next 2 years were going to be this guy pouring into me in a youth ministry context. But with him leaving, it left me and the junior high guy, who I just deeply respect and admire. We were kind of running the student ministries for a few years. And man, that's where I just made every mistake in the book. I just burned bridges and was struggling with how do you lead people and how do you serve people and learning how to speak. And they had me leading worship, which I'm tone deaf. So I'm leading worship and strings are breaking and kids are plugging their ears. And it's just like, it was just 2 years of just so much growth and trial by error and a lot of learning. So went finally to Point Loma Nazarene University out here in San Diego. For my last 2 years, was a full-time student and a high school ministry intern at a church out there, and then went for 4 years at a church in the LA area, Los Angeles area. Was there for 4 years I was the assistant high school director, got to work for an amazing lady named Faith Field, and she was the high school director. And then came out here to Purpose Church 3 years ago. Yeah. And came on staff as the high school pastor, and then got asked to be the student ministries pastor to help lead the team. And so for the first time, I feel like I was able to take all the good that I learned and all the bad that I had learned and figure out how to lead this team and sync us up. And I just know because of other places I had been at, the importance of the student ministries team really being unified. And I kind of just had this dream early on, man, what would it look like if we were all one united force, moving in the same direction, on the same team, loving, encouraging each other, building each other up? Because as you know, Steve, student ministries can be lonely and it can be hard. And so just wanting to create a team atmosphere where we love and we serve each other and we handle conflict in healthy ways, not with passive aggressiveness, but with conversations. And so it's been a fun ride to see the high school ministry change and evolve and grow, and it's been cool to see our team come together and really just have great people like Adrian, and we got our student ministries assistant Courtney is just phenomenal, and then we got a gal named Laura who's hoping to join the team, and she's great. We got a student ministries intern. And then we got a 5th-6 pastor who is just phenomenal. So it's cool that God's bringing together this team of people that are just leading some great things here.
Yeah, for sure. That's so awesome. I know, like, probably a lot of other people that are listening, they're maybe from some small rural church. They're like, wow, I have everybody from birth through 18 under my control. And they're like, it would be awesome to have a full team of all these different people working different roles, and we were all able to connect together. So,
but one thing I would say to that, Steve, would be we have great volunteers. So that, what I just shared was kind of our team, but each of us lead these different ministries, and man, we'd not be able to last a Wednesday night or a Sunday morning without the committed, dedicated, passionate, integrity-filled volunteer leaders that we each have.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think both of us have worked in smaller church contexts as well. That I think that's really, like, for those who are, come from that context. I think, man, you get a special extra crown for working stretching those resources and all that. So I appreciate both ends of the spectrum in terms of whether you're in charge from birth to 18 or you only got a small section that you're looking out for. I think doing a great job.
Yeah. And like you said, we'll talk about tips and everything we want to share, but I think that was great. I want to point out the importance of teams. No matter if your church is, 50 people and you're struggling, with the 5 kids that you got there, or you have, a church of thousands and you've got hundreds of students, no matter what, you need a team around you. And because if the church is bigger, you just need more of a team, because there's always going to be places where volunteers can pitch in and really round out the team.
Exactly. And we're fortunate to work at a church where, and Adrian and I are passionate about this, creating that team mentality across the board, across departments, across the whole church. And so we've got other staff members that are in departments different than us, and we'll get into this podcast a little bit, how we've partnered with our 50-plus ministry, but we've got tons of other great ministries here at our church that we're trying to partner with, that we're trying to invest in those leaders. And so really, and our senior pastor models this so well for us, that we are a united team, and we love and care for each other, and we're invested in each other, and I think that helps us go the distance.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome. So let's jump in a little bit to when the second question we're going to ask is, what's your ministry look like? So I know one of you guys is over junior high and kind of the creative side of things. One's more over the high school and just a general team. So how's everything structured, I guess, and what's things look like on a week-to-week basis on how you reach your students?
Yeah, so I would say I pretty much from right off the bat, since I have been here for the past year and a half, we've spent a lot of our time syncing up our ministries, because I think even at larger churches, you can tend to even silo out the youth department or student ministries departments, where you got, fifth, sixth doing its own thing, junior high doing its own thing, and then high school doing its own thing. And it can even lend to perhaps like a competitive nature. And so I think right off the bat, we really wanted to bring the team together and synchronize the look and feel of our programs, not just for our sake on the back end, but I think also for our parents and students, so that they continue to have a similar experience as they move through from fifth grade all the way up through their senior year in high school. So pretty much we operate totally around a small groups model. So we do a Wednesday night and a Sunday morning program. Wednesday nights is kind of your classic youth group night, welcomes, maybe some games or icebreaker, some sort of worship element, a teaching, and then breaking off and giving a huge chunk of our time to small groups. And those are age and gender specific. So, 7th grade guys, 11th grade girls, all with their leaders. And we really feel like, even if we were in a smaller context, that is something that is really scalable. And no matter what size of a church you're in, I think small groups is, just really working well for us and even for churches larger than us as well. But that's our kind of like our Wednesday night, and then Sunday morning maybe looks a little bit different for each of our programs. On Sunday mornings in junior high, I will speak on whatever we discussed that Wednesday, and then Eric, you have some discussion.
Yeah, we kind of do. Maybe we'll be in a different series. To be honest with you, Steve, we're kind of in the process of discussing what it would look like for high school students to be more an integral part of the larger church. Okay. And so, wrestling with some of the good data that's come out of Sticky Faith from the Fuller Youth Institute, and so just trying to say, how do we create an environment, a church environment, where students are not perceived as the church of the future. They're not perceived as the church of tomorrow, but they're the church of today, and they are a part of the church of today, and that the whole church recognizes them as a part of the church. And so, we're really trying to figure out what that looks like. I would say one of the unique things about the way in which we do small groups is that Wednesday nights, especially I think in high school and junior high, is true that they tend to be our larger nights. Yeah. And small groups are not just open to students who sign up for them or students who, want to go deeper in their faith. They're actually open to everyone. And so it's kind of an interesting dynamic, because within a small group, you'll have a range of students that are in different places spiritually. So some of them will have just been invited by a friend, and they just show up because they want to be there, and they hear that it's a cool place to be. And then you have students that want to go really deep. And so the small group environment, and part of that is intentional, because I fear that as new students come to our programs, that they're seeing a show, that they're seeing great music, they're seeing some teaching, they're seeing some of this or that, and missing that so core to what it means to follow Jesus is to be in community and to ask questions and to wrestle and to be even uncertain. And I just see the disciples. I see Jesus going up to them and saying, "Follow me," and they begin following pretty early. But man, if you read the Gospels and take them seriously, it's crystal clear that they're pretty uncertain about what it means to follow Jesus, and they're wrestling, and they're trying to figure it out as they go. And that's the kind of environment we want for our small groups. And so I want students on their very first night who come to our program. And at our high school program, it can be a little bit larger. And so at times, I don't get a chance to meet every single student, but I know that every single student who comes on a Wednesday night has an adult that gets to know them, that is finding out a little bit about their lives. And from the very first night they're with us, even if it's their very first time in church, they're recognizing that how Christians do life is in community. That church is not just a place to show up and experience a show, but the church is a place to go and to wrestle with things and to ask questions and to share life. And so so that can make our small groups a little messy. It also, we have just a high dependency on our adult leaders. Our adult leaders are not chaperones. They are small group leaders. They are discipling students week in and week out. And so our leaders are, unapologetically the best on the planet. They love students and do such a good job of pouring into them because they're really needed. They play a huge role in our ministry. And then outside of that, we have student leadership in high school ministry. We do a student leadership program where students really own the ministry. So come spring, virtually everything on the spring calendar is a student leadership, a student leader planned event or ministry that they're starting. Okay. And so then we do kind of some of the camps and retreats and those kind of things. Yeah. We're syncing up junior high and high school. We're starting to do something. Our church is in Pomona, and so we started something a little while ago called We Heart Pomona, and it's a junior high and high school joint event where we just serve our city. And part of that was we found that there were we were doing a lot of service things outside of our city, and just recognized that if we want to have influence over our city and if we want to invite people from our city to come and check out our church and be a part of our community, that we've got to be serving them and connected with them. So that's something we've been doing. And then, I think, the thing that we're excited to talk about in a little bit with you is how we've sort of partnered with some of our 50+ ministry. And that's been something that Fifth, Sixth, junior high and high school has teamed up with our 50+ ministry, and just being able to see intergenerational ministry done in a way that we're really excited about. Yeah.
Cool. Let's jump into that, because that's something I'm really excited about as well. I've always heard, the big name people at the different conferences, and they're talking a lot about intergenerational ministry. This is great. How do you get it to work? What do you guys do, and how's that going for you guys?
Yeah, well, I'll start with kind of the story behind it. I mean, we've always, every church I think right now is asking the question. I don't think we've got it nailed down perfectly at all. We're learning as we go, but every church is asking this question: how do you do intergenerational ministry well? And I know in the past how I've done it is just communicating from up front. If I get an opportunity to preach in the main services, or can encourage my senior pastor to say, hey, every student needs 5 adults, right? That's some research that's come out. Every student needs 5 adults who are pouring into them. Church, go pour into students, and maybe every once in a while doing some kind of like event, and sometimes it goes well and sometimes it doesn't. And so we were just wrestling with that question. And a few years ago, myself and our 50+ pastor went out for lunch, and how this whole thing got started was he had a passion and I had a passion for the same thing. And he had a passion to influence his 50+ community to invest in students. And, I'll never forget, he was saying, look, these people have more money. Most of them have more money than they've ever had before in their lives. They have more time than they've ever had in their lives. They have more wisdom than they've ever had in their lives. And yet they haven't been empowered yet to really pour into students and to really invest in them. And then in the same way, I wanted to create an environment where students could benefit and pour into our 50+ folks who were interested in creating this kind of relationship. So we went out to lunch and just started brainstorming, and the idea that kind of came out of this discussion was, what if, because we have a small group based ministry, what if we created a spiritual grandparents kind of ministry where some 50+ people, who usually couples, who are passionate about students, what if they signed up to sort of adopt a small group and take that small group under their wing, pray for them weekly, we have the students send prayer requests to the spiritual grandparents, and we have the spiritual grandparents actually send prayer requests to the students. And so we started to kind of dream about what that would look like if every single one of our small groups had a spiritual grandparent that sort of adopted them. And then we said, and what if we did events where the spiritual grandparents would come to a Wednesday night, and we'd get all the student ministries, the students, the leaders, all of us together. We'd get all of these spiritual grandparents together, and we would worship together, and we would open God's word together. And then these spiritual grandparents could actually join the small groups for their time and just talk about life and share about what's going on. And I'm telling you, Steve, like, what it has done to foster actual relationships has just blown us away.
Yeah, I think it took us both by surprise, even when we're talking with the younger students, because I think a certain aspect of this, it works well for an older student. Like a high school student can have a more amazing time getting to know a grandparent at the church. That someone's not their own grandparent. But I think we've even seen what we've been surprised is like incorporating, because Eric kind of tried out first in high school, and then I thought, man, I think our junior hires and even our 5th and 6th graders, they could totally be a part of this as well. So we, after the first semester or so of doing it, we said, let's expand this to everybody. And we have just been so excited seeing the results from that. And I think even junior high and 5th, 6th students have made connections with these seniors at our church, and it has just done, I think, wonders too. Because I think, especially if there are people out there who come from a church where maybe there's a lot of older members, or we're a 146-year-old church, and so I think we have a long history, and there are many people who've been here for a long time. And I think sometimes in some churches there's that tension of, are we reaching young people? Do we cater to them? Are we reaching the senior adults, and they're the givers? So how are we reaching both demographics and growing as well? And I think this has done wonders to even I think revitalize a lot of these seniors and give them just another opportunity to connect with students. And even the things that we've been totally surprised about are, when we go on camps and retreats, there's been a section of our, spiritual grandparents who've gotten together and they've knitted scarves and mittens and little beanies and prayed over them so that these students can be warm when they go to winter camp. And even hosting pool parties at their houses and inviting them over. And
oh my gosh, it's just been it's totally blown us away. And I've just been so encouraged, because I think here's the problem with not doing intergenerational ministry is that you have maybe, I'll call them wiser. You have wiser people in your congregation who have a lot of stereotypes of younger people, and you have younger people who have a lot of stereotypes of older people. And what's been amazing is to see those stereotypes shatter when you get these two groups together in the forms of small groups like this. I think it's a little less awkward than just pairing them up one-on-one. And so what's been amazing, here's what we hear from our spiritual grandparents, is they come to us and they go, I had no idea how hard it was to be a student right now.
Wow.
I had no idea the pressures. We had one spiritual grandma come out of her small group the very first night that we did this. We call it Generations. And so the very first night when we did Generations, this spiritual grandma came out of her small group and she was in tears. And she said, I had no idea that girls in our church are struggling in this way.
Wow.
We did this other idea that Adrian and then one of our other pastors here sort of processed through, was what would it look like? We have a little bit of a Sunday school culture here, especially among our wiser members of the congregation. We have a Sunday school culture. And so Adrian and this other pastor were kind of talking about what would it look like if for one of these generations our students actually went to their Sunday school class. And I got to be honest, man, I was nervous. I was really worried that
students can experience in there.
Yeah, because we're not in control of that. And this hurt my feelings, but I had a student come back and said, I wish we could do that every week. And I was going, well, you suck, because I run a program every week, and
I put a lot of effort into this.
Yeah, I put a lot of effort. But what was so cool is I feel like these students were able to learn about our 50s plus community and realize, man, they have a lot to offer, and they're cool and they're fun and they're engaging people. And so, and just like Adrian said, I mean, we have one guy, his name's Bob Smith, and that's not his cover up name. That is literally his name. Most amazing traditional name, Bob Smith. He is a champion of students in our congregation. And for fear of him ever listening, I'm not going to guess how old he is, but he is an amazing man.
He's got a lot of wisdom.
He's got a lot of wisdom,
wise.
And he loves students. And you know what he started doing? He started wearing our student ministries hats around church.
And I'm talking not just any old hat. Like these are like the cool, hip, I don't know, like baseball caps that like all the guys are wearing.
Yeah,
and
he's
so we
rocking
got custom ones made for the high school.
That's so great.
And
He's
this
rocking it.
is very wise man
Yeah.
is wearing his baseball cap to church. I've even seen it on a Sunday morning.
And here's what's amazing about Bob is Bob is retired, and he runs security at the local raceway where they do demolition derbies and mini NASCAR and stuff like that. So he runs security there, right? So he connects with his small group leaders and the small group students that he's the spiritual grandparent for, and he said, "Hey guys, I could get you free tickets in, and I could get you a free burger. Are you interested in coming?" And they're like, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so we get to see Bob in his element. We get to see him be in Christ as a security guard. We get to, we ended up going to this thing. We sat with him for a little while until he kind of had to go do security stuff. But it was just so cool to see these students, to see them being so blessed by this amazing spiritual grandpa. And honestly, we just have too many stories. Like the podcast would go on and on and on of stories of spiritual grandparents who have just taken their grandkids, taken their small groups under their wing and just loved and served them and helped send them to camp.
We've experienced just, and this is something,
crazy
another
generosity.
thing that we have not, you didn't anticipate at all, but we fundraise to, so I think one part of our story as well is that we're a church that is kind of in an urban context, or has a challenging socioeconomic area in our direct neighborhood, and so sending students to camp for us, for some some of our more affluent students, it's not a problem at all, but for others they really need scholarships. So we fundraise every year to help provide scholarships so that students can go to camp. And these grandparents and even grandparents rallying their classes to give towards, sending students to camp has been overwhelmingly, just so cool to see their generosity.
And I would say another benefit, another awesome thing has been, as we as a church are, again, Adrian brought up that we have 146 years of history here, and we have 146 years of history of our church making big steps to continue to reach students and to continue to reach the community. And as we're starting to make some of those steps and make some changes, trying to create a church environment that students want to be at, that students feel connected to, there could be a frustration or a pushback from some of our congregation who don't fully understand those changes or whatever. Right. But since we have these spiritual grandparents, they know our students, they know what's going on, so they can speak into some of the maybe frustrations and remind people of why we're making some of the changes we're making. And so spiritual grandparents have just overall become champions of student ministries. Yeah. And again, they're usually the wealthiest in our congregation. They have the most amount of time, and they're the wisest. Yeah. And so to get those people pouring into our students and backing and supporting student ministries is just a win-win-win.
Yeah. And I think the funny thing, it was another story that we've heard too, is now the spiritual grandparents, since we've done this, and we're going into our second year of spiritual grandparents, they are peer pressuring other grandparents to get involved, saying, "Oh, you're not a spiritual grandparent?
What's wrong with you?
How could you not be investing in the next generation?" So they are even peer pressuring their peers, kind of back in, like they were in high school, they're saying, "You got to get involved in this thing. You'd be crazy not to."
Yeah. So this is the second year you're doing this?
Yeah, so we're getting into our second year.
Wow. And so all this cool stuff has just happened in its first year.
Very quickly, yeah. And I think, for those who are listening, thinking, man, how can I begin this? I think, sometimes we embark on something that we think, man, is this going to require like hours and hours? And, what does this look like? I think the biggest thing for us is all it started with was, hey, can we just make a connection first and pair a grandparent with a small group and a small group leader, and let's just start praying for each other. And so it just looks like filling out a piece of paper with their picture on it, and, that small group, and then they send it off to the grandparent, and the grandparent responds with their prayer requests. And so they just started praying for each other. And so maybe in someone's context, that might be the thing that they can do. Yeah. Or, also then we said, hey, can we get them on a Wednesday night? Could our grandparents, our spiritual grandparents, could they come to a high school or junior high service on a Wednesday night? And that was nerve-wracking when we first kind of talked through the idea, but they show up and they carpool together. Like our seniors pastor, he'll go and pick them up at their house sometimes and bring, these grandparents out along late on a Wednesday night, and
beautiful.
Kids are skateboarding in the background, going off of like jumps and stuff, and these grandparents are standing right by their side. It is the craziest.
And we set up. I remember the second time we did it, we set up a photo booth, and so we had students taking pictures with their spiritual grandparents, and had spiritual grandparents bringing in their yearbooks and showing some of the pictures and some of that kind of stuff. One spiritual grandparent is an engineer, and so he brought in some of his like old tools that he would use back in the day. And I think one of the things that's been really exciting about this again is it started out with, again, like Adrian said, just prayer requests, and it can be a little tedious because we have to mail them. That's just the community that we're working with here. Is there's more mailing, and so
text messages.
Yeah, no text, no email. So we're mailing out the prayer requests. But then we just put on our calendar, we said once in the fall and once in the spring, we're going to do Generations. And Generations is a night where all students and all spiritual grandparents come together. We worship, small portion of teaching, and then they break up into small groups. And we gave them some questions. We let them get to know each other a little bit. But what it's created is there has been a handful of our spiritual grandparents who show up now once a month. Who show up just to be there. And we've told they want more time with their students. And we've told our spiritual grandparents from the beginning, hey, you are welcome here anytime. Whenever you want to come and be a part of 5th, 6th ministry, junior high ministry, high school ministry, you are welcome. And some of them, and slowly more of them, are taking us up on that offer. And that is really, really exciting. And we try to highlight that. And I just think that is the coolest thing ever when a 70-year-old woman shows up to a high school ministry event, sits with her girls and is praying for them, and then allows them to pray for her. We have this one picture of this group of, I think they were sophomore girls, laying their hands, all of them were laying their hands on this 70-year-old woman, praying for her and lifting her up. And this woman, I know, has provided so much encouragement to them and spoken into their lives. Some of these spiritual grandparents do text, and so I've heard from some students who actually text with their spiritual grandparents. Some of the groups go over to their spiritual grandparents' house again for like pool parties or just to have a meal and hang out. And this is again one of those things where, and we're trying to get into this more, where our small group leaders can really help foster this relationship. And so then the small group leaders even have another level of support and encouragement coming from their spiritual grandparents.
That's awesome. That's so great.
Yeah, so it's been a fun thing to be a part of. And, I think that we've hit on it a little bit. And I don't think that we've nailed it down perfectly, and there's always room to grow. But for us, striving at wanting to do ministry in an intergenerational way, this is so far what we've got, and we're excited about it, and we're excited to make improvements and just see how God's using it to build his generational kingdom.
Yeah.
That's cool. I one of the awesome things that stuck out to me is that you're intentionally building it around a spiritual connection. And because I think a lot of times we try to do intergenerational ministry, and we try to create these events that is somehow appealing to, a 11-year-old boy, but also appealing to, a 70-year-old woman. And like, how do you create those events that are going to appeal to both? And we're like, hey, come out and hang out and naturally make these connections. But I think when you build it around Christ and you build it around those relationships and prayer, it makes so much more sense, and they can come together and worship together, and it sounds like that's been really awesome connection for you guys to make.
And then, I think you're right, Steve. And then I think those other things, like, we've had students help their spiritual grandparents with setting up iPads and their iPhones and doing that kind of stuff. And that stuff.
Had a tech training day. And
we just did a day.
Whoa, we've got tech experts. They're, students.
15, send them over there. So we definitely do stuff like that. But I think the core of it is these Generations Wednesdays and Sundays where students get in the same circles and with their spiritual grandparents and are talking about Jesus and are processing life and are hearing each other's stories. And it's just been a very, very cool thing. And I just don't think there's been any pushback to it. Like Adrian said, there's just been there's at this point we actually have, I think, too many spiritual grandparents. So we're having to pair up spiritual grandparents with spiritual grandparents to take on a small group. So that's
a good problem to have.
That's right. And then I think overall, and our seniors pastor has helped me understand this greater, that it's empowering this group of people who, may think, well, there's no longer a place for me at the church. There's no, I'm not young like I was. Yeah, I've lost my influence. I'm not as significant anymore. And what we're trying to say to them is, oh my gosh, that couldn't be farther from the truth. That there is a place for you in ministry here, a significant place. And we can't wait to see God use you in students' lives. We've been having a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, and I think even there might be, if someone's thinking about doing this in your church context, you might even have a picture of, those wiser members of your church who maybe tend to get frustrated about things or let you know what they think about things. And we've even seen, church folks like that in our context who've then become a spiritual grandparent, and it has warmed and softened their hearts outside of this program, but just in general, and just given them something that they can pour into.
That's right.
And have meaning in. So it's been very phenomenal.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's so cool. Any other tips and tricks before we close out today that you think you picked up along the way and you're like, you know what, this is something I've learned that other people need to hear about as well?
Yeah, I think, and I think Eric started out with this. I feel like the number one thing that has allowed us to even come up with something like this program is just having a good team, connection. And so maybe you're the only person on your team, or maybe you have a team of, 3, 4, 5, who knows? I think the closer you can be with your team, or even, working interdepartmentally within your church, would partner with another pastor and create, something that's totally different, that's bridging generations in a way that we didn't even mention. But I think as much as you can, make those connections, and it's worth it. We've heard from our seniors pastor that he's, talked with, other 50 plus pastors that he knows, and they're struggling because, youth pastors might not want to or even think about partnering with their, 50 plus pastor. And, some contexts it's not going to work for whatever reason, but, at all possible, I would say it is so worth it to develop those partnerships, to develop a solid team. I think open communication is so vital among a team that you're working close with. And I think when I'm honest with Eric and Eric's honest with me, and we can be raw with each other, but love each other at the end of the day, like that just allows us to go so much farther and faster than we ever thought possible. So unity and that team bonding is absolutely crucial, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't really have anything else to echo. I think that's beautifully put. In fact, Adrian got so excited there that he did take off his shirt. And so his shirt is official.
I did not. All my clothing is on.
Let your viewers know he officially took off his shirt.
I'm glad we are audio only.
Praise the Lord. Yeah, but Steve, I think that, again, working as a team has been really, really powerful and helpful for us. And it's just been an exciting time. And I guess it comes really out of, I've been at other churches where there wasn't that teamwork. There wasn't that support. There wasn't that connection with other people. And I've just said, we just won't have that on our team. We won't have that on our team. We demand that each other share vulnerably and share what's going on and share frustrations. Because
having the hard conversations.
Yeah, we have the hard conversations, and it's good because we're able to resolve them. We're able to learn a little bit more about each other. And then I think there's less roadblocks, right? When you've got a team where there's a lot of passive aggressive going on, there's no way you are moving fast together. There's dissension, and it's just bad. And at this church as a whole, and then especially in student ministries, we're just trying to say, man, we are going to be a united front, and we're going to partner up, and we're going to see what God has for us. So yeah, that's again, just to echo what Adrian said, it's been really, really a good season and a lot of fun. And yeah, we're excited. We're excited to hear about. We've talked to a few other churches and groups about spiritual grandparents and generations, and we're just excited to add to the conversation of how do you do intergenerational ministry well.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah, I know it. It's something I'm going to definitely go back to our senior minister and say, hey, okay, how can we do something like this? We're a younger church. We don't have a whole lot of people that are seasoned just yet, but how can we maybe put this in place so that, down the line when we get more, when naturally people get older, and how can we get something like this going in the future?
Yeah. So. Well, and I think our spiritual grandparents range from 45 to 85.
Cool.
So it can be definitely that spread, and yeah, it's just been a good time.
Cool. So I'm sure people are going to want to learn more about all this and connect with you online. Where are some places for them to connect with you and to maybe read more from you or anything like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know what we have. www. No, I don't really have a website, and I don't think maybe Adrian has a secret gamer website that I don't know about. But I don't think so.
I'm not a secret gamer.
He does game. He plays World of Warcraft and he plays LOL. What if Steve's viewers like playing that and they want to team up?
Wow,
with
they could, but they wouldn't find me there.
He does play those games shirtless though, so your viewers need to know that.
Wow,
it's crazy ministry going on there in California.
It is. Yeah, welcome to California. I would say honestly, I think if they wanted to connect with us, best way would be just to shoot us an email. They can email me, Eric, ERIC, the letter H, at purposechurch.com, or they can email Adrian,
Adrian, P, at purposechurch.com. And you could also find me if you wanted on Instagram. I feel like I live on there a lot. So it's Adrian, ADRIAN _ Pichay, PICHAY.
Yes, and if you want to see lots of pictures of my kids and my family and my boring life, you can check out my Instagram, and that's Eric H. Holmstrom. So yeah, man. Hey, Steve, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for having us, and it's been so great to connect with you a little bit. And yeah, man, it's been a real cool time.
Yeah, it's been great to talk with you guys, and thanks for coming on and chatting for a little bit. And as all our listeners, make sure you contact with them, especially if you want to learn more about this intergenerational ministry, this grandparents ministry. This is awesome, and I'm sure they can share more with you than what they've had a chance to talk about today. So make sure you connect with them. And Adrian and Eric, may God bless your ministry.
Awesome. Thanks you so much, Steve.
And thank you so much for tuning in once again. Let's be honest, wasn't that extra time on this podcast it was worth it, right? Yeah, I thought so too. I know you were blessed by this conversation, and I hope it's inspired you to look at your church a little differently and how you can do intergenerational ministry within your own context. Maybe it's something very similar to what Eric and Adrian are doing, or maybe it's something entirely different. But we need to be connecting all the generations together and really taking that further in God's kingdom and His church. So make sure you contact Eric and Adrian if you have more questions about how they're doing that ministry. But also, if you have questions or comments or anything, you can contact me on Twitter at Steve Cullum, or you can actually write the podcast at our email address. It's studentministrypodcast@gmail.com. And in the future, we'd actually like to do some question and answer shows and things like that. So if you send in your questions, you can either send them in 140 characters less to my Twitter at Steve Cullum, but you can also email us at the show at studentministrypodcast@gmail.com, and we would love to hear from you. Speaking of that, we'd also love to get your comments and reviews and everything on all the different podcast avenues out there, like iTunes and TuneIn Radio and all these different ways. Speaking of which, we are now on Google Play. So for all the Android people out there, you can listen on Google Play now to the Student Ministry Podcast. And we actually have a new domain. If you haven't checked that out yet, it's thestudentministrypodcast.com. You can go straight there. We're still through Podbean, but we actually have our own domain, so that's really exciting. And just please, if you like this podcast, please share it. Please get the word out there, because that's one of the best ways for us to get known and for these stories, these amazing stories from youth workers to be heard, is for you to help us share it out there with other youth workers that you think would enjoy it. So please do so. We want to thank once again our sponsors for sponsoring this. Without them, this would be nothing. And so we thank WorkCamp NE, and you can get there at workcampne.com. We also thank the National Network of Youth Ministries at youthworkers.net. And we also thank Reach Youth New England, and you can get there at reachyouthne.com. And we thank you so much for tuning in once again, and may God bless your ministry.